there are many different types of state routes, and I think it's kind of a misnomer that you can't design a localized state route. As far as Picard, I think there's still a lot of flexibility with how Picard is designed. But I think immediately the question really boils down to how do we route trucks around the city, and I think it not only for High Street but also for the northern portion of Mission Street, it makes more sense for that, and I think it supports a lot of the other recommendations for land use in the plan. Certainly on neighborhood connectivity, and but also on Mission Street and what we want to do to retrofit and localize Mission Street.
Okay. I know it wasn't that long ago that High Street was actually 25 miles an hour. Would the city be able to change that because it wasn't a state road back to that if they wanted to make it a little more pedestrian friendly?
Yeah, I mean, the change jurisdiction would enable each jurisdiction to implement their own design principles and speed limits, et cetera. I think in order to facilitate the reroute, the most immediate impact you'd likely see would be to the roads in the township that would become the new M20, upgrading those to certain MDOT standards for acceptance, and then that would likely be followed over the long term by enhancements to the other roadways that might be beneficial to achieve some of the other, really some of the driving reasons why this has come up since 1965 in our city's master plan again and again, which is to respect the residential context of High Street as it traverses the city, and also to provide for or to create less of a barrier between the university and our downtown and through that neighborhood. Which again, we've heard time and time again that road functionally does create a bit of a wall between the two sections of what is really one neighborhood.
I got a question. Page 20, I think of the action plan, talking about permitting backyard chickens and maybe goats. Example, Kansas City. What's the story behind that?
Oh, it's urban farming recommendation.
I will say the items in that section beginning on page 18 come directly from the boards that are depicted on page 17. So that's a typed summary of public input that was received on those boards. So good, bad, wonderful, interesting, indifferent, all of those comments were coming from a member of
These
the
are
public.
public comments then.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, those aren't necessarily staff or consultant recommendations. That's just documentation of that feedback.
So we have no idea what the Kansas City reference means, really?
We haven't researched it, but happy to.
Okay. So all right. So this is not necessarily a recommendation that you're making.
It's a part of the documentation process. So even what you're looking at is a synthesized version of all the comments, but yeah, I mean, urban farming is popular, and it's something that we hear. I think it's worth noting in the report that people are interested in it.
Yeah, we get not infrequent calls in the planning department from folks inquiring about our chicken policies.
Yeah, I know it happens a lot in California, so.
In Kansas City, apparently.
Apparently, yes. But yards out there tend to be a lot larger.
You've been in this business a while. And there's parts of this that are crazy. And I don't mean that in an inappropriate way. I mean, they're pretty far-reaching. How much of a master plan ever ends up getting adopted? Do you have a rough percentage in your experience?
Well, I think I know what you mean, but what you said was adopted, and I'm going to say 100%. 100% of this master plan I want to get adopted. But I think what you mean is implemented, right? You know, that's the fine line, right? The fine line is how do you, you know, temper what you think of reality today with a aspirational vision for the future, right? And where do you set that line? I think that, you know, one of the things in this plan that is really interesting is even, you know, some of the concept plans that we presented that show, you know, full build-outs. We know that those are concept plans. What they're intended to do is assist people like planning commissioners in evaluating site plans as they come in. Does this seem to be aligned with our vision for development? But what we're showing is a build-out scenario effectively that is already articulated in your zoning code, right? And what I think was really successful at the charrette was that for most of what we heard was really supportive of the zoning code. And we did start from a point of kind of a blank slate in these areas where we wanted to evaluate what the vision was, what the preferences were, what the options were. And what we heard was very supportive of the existing zoning code. You know, some of it is regulation is a little abstract, right? Because people can do a lot of things with their property. It doesn't mean they're ever going to do it, right? And what we do with the plan is we actually try to say, all right, well, what do we want people to do? And that helps to stabilize the market. It lets people know that if they invest, they're going to have the support of the community. With the iterative process, right, we're going to check in 5 years. We're going to come back and see, you know, does this align? You know, we can always go back and even change regulations. But what we want to do is set the bar high and create a vision for the city to work for and for developers to work towards. And you know, that is what we're doing. And I think a lot of times it happens in projects, right? So I think what we have here is some big ideas that can really synthesize around some concrete projects. A reconstruction project for Mission Street, you know, a few, you know, master developer type projects, mixed use projects on Mission Street, and you really see some change and some catalytic change, and I think that's what I'm hearing the community wants, you know. And with that in mind, you know, I think that those projects happen. You know, one or two projects combined with a partnership with MDOT to do some work on Mission Street, you've got a real, you know, feasible vision. And it might not look like the total build out, but it's going to look like success, I think, you know.
I was just going to offer some concrete examples locally of past master plans that have had impact, and certainly all of those master plans are on the city's website if you want to peruse them and see what past planning commissions envisioned our future to be like. And what you'll find is that none of those visions came into fruition 100%, and this one likely will not. Let's be positive and pretend like it's probably not going to be 100% realized. But some of those changes that we've seen, you know, many of the aspects of our downtown that exist today are as a result of our 1965 master plan, which envisioned the development of town center. It envisioned the conversion of several streets to a one-way traffic pattern. That's something that we've recently undone in our downtown. Our 1987 master plan envisioned, really highlighted the community's concern about water quality and led to the development of the city's water plan, a really important infrastructure improvement, which I think we're all probably more and more grateful for every day here in Mount Pleasant, to have clean and safe drinking water. Road extensions, so the plan has conceived extension of roadways, including Preston Street and Bellows Street to Isabella Road. Those are some concrete changes that happened as a result of master planning. You know, some things that haven't happened, as going back to our conversation earlier, the M20 reroute was first proposed as a result of the city's 1965 master plan. It was proposed again in 1987, it was proposed again in 2006, it remains in our current adopted master plan in 2014. Why is it that that hasn't happened? Well, I don't think it's because of a lack of community interest. I think it's because of a lot of challenges that make implementation of that desired outcome challenging. And we'll probably continue to work at it. What we have seen is circulation plans for the community called for improving Isabella Road, improving Broomfield Road, improving Lincoln Road, improving Pickard Street. All of those things have happened. So aspects of that desired outcome have occurred. We just haven't gotten to that point of 100% finality of the M20 reroute. So, and that's just high level big stuff that you couldn't help but miss. There's many other smaller changes that have happened over time as a result of policy decisions that the master plan called for that have just been implemented over the course of decades.
Any other questions or comments?
On figure 1.1, what does frequency mean? It says,
This is the land use table.
table 1.1, I'm sorry, not figure, in book 1.
I'm lucky because I have that table in my PowerPoint. I don't have the plan in front of me.
I mean, I get acres, I just don't know what frequency stood for.
I think it's the number of parcels.
That's would be what I would assume.
Yeah.
There was when it got around to the university, and it said the university had implemented roundabouts in a rerouting of East Campus, and those things haven't happened. So I wondered.
We have that flagged for update of the 100% plan. I've got that down already, but thank you for noticing.
I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on the Mission Street concept. It looks like people will be taking, is that East Campus Drive rather than to go through rather than Mission. Am I reading that correctly?
No. Mission Street will be a 2-lane in each direction corridor like it is now. The idea is that with adding some access control, on-street parking, landscaping, frequent crossings, continuing with the city's efforts to create some access control and kind of cross-access blocks. We would support land use development of a higher intensity, which is what the zoning ordinance calls for. So that's what the plan is showing is a kind of a grand boulevard or a high street that would be supportive of 4 to 6 story buildings. I can't recall what the zoning permits in the highest.
Up to 5.
Up to 5. There, I nailed it. Somewhere between 4 and 6. So up to 5-story buildings. That's a lot of density, and those types of buildings would change the character of that street. But if someone were to invest in that type of redevelopment, you'd want the transportation system to support it. And what we're showing kind of is a land use and transportation concept plan in a built-out state. So I think that this would happen, over obviously a period of time. But the projects that I think would really make it happen would be a reconstruction project for Mission Street, and at least 1 to possibly 2 master redevelopment plans for a few sites along the corridor, and you'd be pretty much there.
What's a bypass to a bypass? And there was a lot of historical note about Mission Street had at some point been on the edge
I would call it, you know, probably, a little bit of, artistic liberty in the description of, the purpose of business routes. But the point that we were trying to make is that, you know, business routes were, initially created as, in California as, ways to access